that's sourdough Sam.
No, Sourdeath Sam.
Sourdeath Sam.
Sourdeath Sam.
Sourdeath Sam.
Disrespect to Sourdeath Sam will not continue.
What's up, everybody? What's up? Man, the comments are dripping right now, just off the bat. Much love. Zach, yes, you were here early, but that's okay. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Oh, dude, Axel knows what time it is. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And then I got my man Fireworks, best 49ers content here. I appreciate that, Doug. I appreciate that. What's going on, guys? It is Sourdeath Sam. I just had an empanada. I am feeling groovy. And we beat the fucking Seahawks, man. That's fucking tight. I gotta be honest, man. That game had me nervous. I'm sure it had you nervous too. But guess what? I feel like the Seahawks are going to be nervous right now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Let's recap. So obviously a very important, very substantial victory against the Eagles. Yet another statement game from the troops. By the way, Diet Coke, just the best ever. So I'm sipping on DC today. Believe that. Really outstanding performance by the 49ers against the Eagles. And I'll be honest, I had the score estimated to be 17-13 49ers. I didn't expect us to... First of all, when I made that prediction, the assumption was that the weather was going to be trash. Clearly, we lucked out because not only did we exceed 17 points, not only did we exceed 30 points, we got to 40 points. And that was really important. I'll tell you why. We needed to prove that we were who we thought we were. I think when we beat the Cowboys and they actually came out and talked about sort of the psychological response to beating the Cowboys, everyone's saying that you're amazing, you're unbeatable, and then, of course, taking 3 L's in a row. But I think it is also important for us to remind ourselves that we are capable of being unbeatable if we do not beat ourselves. And that's what we did. We proved against what everyone has presumed to be the number 1 NFC seed going into the playoffs. We proved that they weren't as tough as they thought they were. And I love it because truthfully, we needed to reassert ourselves as the alphas of the NFC. Frankly, potentially the alphas of the NFL. And we did just that on Sunday. I had the pleasure of watching the game at an Eagles fan's house, and he ordered a bunch of food. I made my brisket. It was fire. And, he had ordered some food, basically spent a lot of money to get to watch his team get whooped in front of a bunch of 49ers fans. So, I appreciate you, homie. We also put some money on the game. I won $10. Life is good. And life is extra good tonight because I've got a very special guest, friend of the show. If you've been watching the show, you know what time it is. I got my man, Rich motherfucking Madrid, on the show tonight.
Yes, sir.
But anyone who's watched the show before knows that you're going to have to go through a bunch of bullshit before we get to the good stuff. It's like eating your vegetables first, but the vegetables don't have any salt or seasoning. It's just me dicking around. Speaking of things that make, let's talk about my $5 pick'em. All right, boys. I'll be honest, man. I'm back to losing again. That's sort of what I'm doing these days, just taking L's. But I'm doing it with a smile. But this time, It's going to be different. It's always going to be different when it's this time coming up. I got Jared Goff throwing two touchdowns, throwing more than one touchdown. I think he's got the juice. Matthew Stafford, I got him going over 19 completions. I have a feeling that the Rams might be playing from behind. I have a feeling that they are going to have to pass a lot. Call me crazy, call me stupid. You can call me sexy too. But I do think that Matthew Stafford will get over 19 completions.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Rashad White, he's been good for me, man. Every time on all my parlays, look, I might be losing, but it's not because of Rashad White. And I think he's going to get more than 54.5 rushing yards against Atlanta. I think Debo is going to get more than 4 receptions against the Seahawks. And I think George Pickens is going to get more than 3 receptions. That's just me. That's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments. We're all going to die eventually, so Sam is sexy. Ooh, I like that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's why I like having Zach in the chat, man. He's real good at gassing me up. I appreciate that very much. All right, I'm going to cut to a guest. He's a little fickle. It's not Rich, although, he can be a little fickle sometimes, but mostly on Twitter. He's a mensch in every other facet of life. But I'm going to cut to a friend. We'll see how he behaves. You know him. You love him. Sometimes you wonder if he is self-aware. Ladies and gentlemen, Kyle 4000. Kyle, man, what's going on? Congrats on the victory against the Eagles. How you doing? I got to say, you cracked a joke today. I appreciated that. I thought that was really nice of you to do. Kind of want to see how you're doing, man. Seeing how life is. It's going to leave me hanging, dude. You're welcome. You got anything else? Hey, man, I'm feeling pretty good. I think, if I got to say that I'm feeling confident, I'll say it about this game, but you never know. You really never know. But, I will say that Rich is on the show. I know you're a big fan. You don't shut the fuck up about him. And, just kind of stoked for that. Now, out of curiosity, I know Christmas is coming up. Kyle 5000, is there anything that you want for Christmas? Is it a new hat? Is it some new Yeezys? Sort of where are you sitting with this? I had to guess. I would say like some new sneakers, because you've been pacing the sidelines like a motherfucker. Hell yeah, bro. I got a special wish. Number 1 seed in the NFC, baby.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, guys, that's enough of this idiot. It's back to me. We're almost at the end of the season. It's kind of crazy. We're really approaching the stage here where people are going to start clinching playoff seats. And the one thing I appreciate about this team is we had our losses back to back. It tested our resiliency. It tested the fabric of who our identity was as a team. And we persevered. I think this Eagles game was so critical for sort of rejuvenating that faith, not only obviously from the fans to the team, but within the team itself. I think that obviously Chase Young, fabulous pickup. You could see the sacks just started piling in as soon as he came along. I would say Nick Bosa turning on as a result of that. really ideal. And I'm really curious as well to see just where our defense goes, how we stack these games up. The Ravens on Christmas scares me a lot. It's no joke. I think that team is really powerful, is really capable, and they have the ability to be lethal. And I'm really, really curious to see how we're going to stack up against them. But all in all, I think we have a pretty clear idea that this team is going to make the playoffs. The question is what's the seed? Who are we going to play? Are we playing at home? Are we playing away? But ultimately, you have to be proud of this team's performance, and you've got to be really excited about what one young guy in particular has been putting together for a potential MVP season. So I'm going to get into that with Rich later in the show, but I do have some tweets that I would like to pull up, and this segment is called Sweet Tweets. And it's because of you guys that I get to do this segment. It's free content. I'm just ripping your shit and making it mine. It's beautiful. It's like what those fast fashion companies do. Okay. So first and foremost, we've got Computer Cowboy, who, sometimes people like him, sometimes people don't. Just depends on what kind of computing this cowboy's doing. But this time, I found this kind of interesting. Top offenses by series conversion rate. So obviously calculation put together effectively about offensive potency. And look who's number 9 next to some really fabulous teams. It's us, dude. Obviously number 20 is the Cowboys. They're putting together something pretty strong here towards the end of the season, I got to admit. But you got to be really excited about where we are through week 13 in comparison to other really potent teams that have put together some fabulous offenses. We got Brian Rennick. Shout out. Appreciate you, dog. Brock Purdy against 3 best teams he faced this season. 42-10 against Dallas, 17 for 24, 252 yards, 4 touchdowns. 31-3, San Francisco against Jacksonville, 19 for 26, 296 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And then San Francisco against Philadelphia, of course, 19 for 27, 314 yards, and another 4-touchdown game. When the lights have shined the brightest, Purdy has shown the fuck out. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And of course, my best friend, David. 48.6% of Brock Purdy's passing yards this season are coming from the yak. That's less than each of the 3 past MVP winners. 2020, Aaron Rodgers, 52.2%. 2021, Aaron Rodgers, 52.7%. 2022, Patrick Mahomes, 54.3%. Brock Purdy coming in at the lowest. Checkmates. Classic David, dude. Classic David.
Yes, sir.
So what is this all saying? We're witnessing something pretty amazing here. First of all, I can't stress enough that Brock Purdy is not a normal situation. We don't constantly... It goes back to when everyone was trying to draft. And let me be clear, I am not drawing the direct comparison here as far as career. But what I am saying is that when Tom Brady started to show who the fuck he was, everyone was trying to hunt for the late round Tom Brady. It just doesn't happen like that. You don't get to open every Easter egg in the 5th, 6th, 7th round and hope that it's a generational quarterback. But we're seeing something really rare. I'm not going to say it's a Tom Brady Easter egg, but I will say that we are witnessing the emergence of a player who drafted where he was drafted had no business being in a kind of conversation like this. There are very few quarterbacks in the history of the NFL who are capable of putting together the season that Brock did, flying as much under the radar as he did. you got to be amazed by it. You got to appreciate it. You got to recognize that at the beginning of the season, we had a little bit of perspective based on what we had seen the previous year. He had stacked some good games together. He had performed under pressure. He had demonstrated he was capable of running this offense, but could he stack the seasons together? Had defenses not figured him out yet? Do we feel like he is going to be worth that second contract that comes in to say we're about to put some millions of dollars into your bank account because we trust you that much? Those questions had to be answered. And those questions are in the process of being answered very emphatically, because this offense continues to hum, it continues to kick, and they continue to shred teams that were destined to be in the playoffs, favorable seeding, looking good. And this defense, got to give them credit too. They started turning this thing around. Steve Wilkes, there's something about him coming on the field must have changed something. I don't really think that's what it is, but hey, I'm sure it helps. What I can say is that there is a difference in the way they have been performing, and you've got to appreciate that. Because at the end of the day, our offense can be as strong as it wants to be, but if we're letting teams put up too many points, it's not going to happen. But we don't have to worry about that. Not as of recently, because they have been making things happen. And you got to love it. You absolutely have to love it. We got Rich coming on the show soon.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I'm very excited about that. And please let me know in the comments if you have some questions for Rich that you need answered, because baby, I'm going to make him answer them. Whether it is what he wants for Christmas, which I'm sure it'd be nice for someone to ask him, even if you're not going to get it for him. Might be nice. Maybe we can crowdfund it. I'm actually curious. I might ask him if you have any questions regarding how he feels about which throwback jersey is his favorite. Feel free to ask that too. But he will be on very shortly, and I'm very excited to have him. In case you want to know a little bit more about football, in case you want to understand the depths of how 49ers roll on offense, I highly encourage you to watch the tape. Rich has an amazing blog, folks, an amazing blog where he goes into excruciating detail about how this team operates. Now, he may have called you an idiot online, but let me tell you something. Rich is a good guy, very good guy, and he's a very smart guy. And if you've ever wanted to understand the depth of how this offense works, or even how our defense works, West Coast football is the way to go. Just incredible analysis. He does not pay me to do this. This is strictly from the bottom of my heart, because game recognized game. This dude is legit. So bit.ly/watch the tape. Get a taste. Get an idea of where he's coming from. Because if you go through his posts, you will leave a smarter man. Believe me that. Believe me that. I got Zachary Greer. He might have some questions for Rich. He don't know if he'll answer them, though. Well, there's only one way to find out. And that's by putting him on the spot, baby. Speaking of putting him on the spot, I got a handsome gent who's hanging in the wings. And his name is Rich Madrid. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Richard J. Madrid.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What's up, dude? How you doing, man?
Not bad. How are you?
Doing good, man. I like the headset. I feel like this is like POV from like a Call of Duty video game, like looking back at you. I just need you talking shit to some like racist kids in the lobby. And then it's the full
Oh, I see
experience.
Zach is in the chat, so I'll talk shit to him.
I like it. Ooh, yes, sir. Spicy.
Yes, sir.
I like that, man. Hey, well, let's not keep the people waiting, man. I'm really excited to have you on. Obviously, every time, I don't know if you heard me gassing you up or not, but I was pitching your blog. I let everyone know how genius you are, how much you give such an in-depth look into how our team operates from front to back. So, in case you didn't catch it the first time, folks, make sure that you check it out. bit.ly/watch the tape. So, Eagles lose flight. Obviously, a major victory for the 49ers, 42-19 in a critical NFC matchup. What did you see from that game that caught your attention?
I just think the Eagles are massively overrated. Just get that out there. I mean, they've been gassed up all year as like the best team in the NFL, and I just never really bought it. They won a lot of close games before this one, by a score like 7 points or less, and everyone's only talking about Jalen Hurts because they keep winning. But I kind of thought he was like a fringe top 10 quarterback, but I never really bought into him as much. And then the last probably month of the season before this game, I just didn't think he played well at all. I mean, he was able to engineer some comebacks for them, like against the Bills and the Chiefs, but they really, like, we wouldn't even be talking about him as an MVP candidate if MVS hadn't dropped that wide open TD pass from Mahomes, or if Kelsey hadn't fumbled in the red zone, or if James Cook hadn't dropped a wide open TD pass from Josh Allen. Like that's how close these things can be in the NFL, and I think that's how these narratives about teams can get kind of skewed. So, I mean, the 49ers fell off the map after a three game losing streak. Everybody kind of stopped talking about them. So, I don't think that they were nearly as good as their record showed coming into this game. I think they were kind of gassed up for no reason.
Yeah, well, I mean, 42-19 was a pretty emphatic victory, and clearly it's demonstrative of two things. One, that the Eagles are certainly beatable. I mean, I think if you've watched any of their games, as you've just stated, I mean, they were not runaway victories. They were opportunities squandered in a lot of occasions by other teams. And so sometimes, one can argue that is a lot that goes into a season. Sometimes it's about how the ball bounces and where the luck lies. But ultimately, to your point, I think they demonstrated that they are not unbeatable. And I think we reasserted ourselves as a team, as the 49ers, a team that can impose our will if necessary. I didn't expect it to happen to that degree, but nonetheless, it was a pleasure to watch. Were there any particular performances on offense that stood out to you before we sort of move on to the defensive side?
I think just like this was Kyle Shanahan's fuck you moment in 2023. He's had one of those every year.
Yes, sir.
Last year it was beating Miami with Brock. This year it was beating this Eagles team, basically every team. I think they've only had one game where they've scored under 30 points that they've won. That 2019 season, it was probably the Saints game on the road in the 4th and 2 play call to Kittle. That was kind of his FU moment. That whole game he was in his bag. This was another one of those games. So I think on the whole, I think the offense, just after the first 2 drives, they figured it out, and they got it going. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they were kind of just feeling out the Eagles defense a little bit, kind of seeing, because that's what you do when you game plan, is you call certain plays and you want to see how they're going to react to certain formations. And they never seem to panic. And so that kind of tells me right there that they may have been feeling out what the Eagles were going to do defensively. And then from there, they just put their foot on the gas and never looked back. So I think it was just probably Shanahan's best called game all season, outside of probably Dallas. But They just never seem to let up.
Yeah, I mean, clearly it got to the point where anytime you can play who you believe was at one point considered a lock to be the number one NFC seed going into the playoffs, anytime that you can insert your backups into a game like that, it's a pretty substantial statement to the rest of the league. Who, quite frankly, I was shocked to see that this game wasn't flexed. I presume that Fox just wanted to have it all for themselves. So be it.
There was no other game for them to put in there.
Yeah, I mean,
So they
America's
weren't going
game
to
of the
give it up.
week certainly felt like America's game of the week to 49ers fans because we fucking ripped, which was really, really nice to see as someone who, quite frankly, I went into the game a little nervous. Did you have any nerves going into the game, or did you just presume that this was going to end up the way it ended up?
No, the way things have been trending, I just felt like they were going to win it. I didn't know that it would turn out like this. I obviously didn't think it would, but I thought that if they didn't make any mistakes, if they just kept playing and executing the way they had, and it sounds cliche, but this team is incapable of scoring less than 30 points, so I didn't think that was out of the equation for them at all. I thought the Eagles might put up more than that, more of a resistance than that, but
I agree.
I didn't really think that the 49ers were going to lose. Somebody was going to have to make them pay for being a bad team late in games or early in games, really. The Bills couldn't do it. The Chiefs couldn't do it. So I thought if anybody was going to do it, it was going to be San Francisco. And they made them pay. The Eagles were terrible in the first half, and the 49ers never looked back. So that's what they needed to do.
Absolutely, and one player in particular who made them pay was Deebo Samuel. Only 4 receptions, but those 4 receptions went for 116 yards, 2 touchdowns. What did you see in that game with respect to Deebo Samuel in his performance against the Eagles?
Just the way the defenses have to react to whatever he does. And then you can kind of add in some of the motions and shifts that they do to get the linebackers thinking about other potential scenarios that they're going to have to deal with. And when you can isolate Deebo on any linebacker, I'll take that matchup 100 out of 100 times. And that's really what it was. They high load. What is it? Is it Brendan Morrow? It's I can't remember his first name, but number 41. He's not even a starter, and so I think that worked to their advantage too. But they put him in just really disadvantageous situations where he had to kind of declare who he was going to cover, and he couldn't cover everyone, so they really picked on him a lot, and that was the difference right there.
Which is such the benefit of having all those riches for weapons is that at a certain point you're going to be able to identify matchups that are just going to be grossly unfair. And obviously Deebo was a particular recipient of those types of matchups and was able to make some money off of it. I mean, 2 touchdowns, only 4 receptions. It's crazy. Averaging 29 yards. That's just the type of explosive opportunity that you get when you have that many weapons on offense. It could have, at any given game, it could be anybody. Ayuk, very potent receiver. George Kittle still has the capability of putting together some excellent games. Potentially could even get a 1,000-yard season if he racks up enough yards and enough good games. It's not completely out of the question. And then, of course, you've got Christian McCaffrey, who's just lightning in a bottle. So on defense, obviously we had spoken about how the score was not as much of an Eagles high-scoring game as you thought it would be. I thought it was going to be a raining game. I wasn't sure what to expect. When I found out the weather was better, I certainly tacked a few more points onto my estimate. Where do you think our defense delivered against the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, early on, they were able to get into some looks that would discourage the run, and after they had stopped them for a bunch of runs for minimal gains, and then they kind of the Eagles kind of went into their RPO packages, and they couldn't get anything out of that. And they were really resorted to making Hurts a drop back passer, and he's just not. That's not his game. He really thrives in a situation where you can get him in an RPO, you can get him to use his legs, you can get him to take a chunk play in the passing game downfield. But anything short, intermediate, over the middle, he's not that type of quarterback. So they really put them in those situations where you're getting 1 yard of carries, no yards, 2 yards. All of a sudden, you're in third and long, and that's where teams have really struggled against the Eagles, especially later in games, is getting them in third and long. Because once you get them in, I think Shanahan had a great quote: "When it's 2nd and 8, it's really 2nd and 4. When it's 3rd and 5, it's really 3rd and 2 with them." So you get them in 3rd and 8 or longer in most of the game, then they're not really going to do much. Hurts is going to drop back, and he's going to have to use his legs. And then up front, they weren't aggressively rushing upfield like they typically do in a one gap defense. They kind of held their lanes, kind of umbrellaed the pocket a little bit, and kept him in there, and they were really able to get home. And now he did get some big plays, but that was early on, and it didn't end up mattering in the long run. So they really turned him into a quarterback he's not really comfortable playing most of the game.
Javon Kinlaw walking away with 2 sacks, which was very nice to see. But yeah, ultimately, I think they put the Eagles in a position where they clearly didn't have the confidence to put any points up towards the end. And what I think was really impressive was that I was terrified that Jair Brown was going to be a position where they were going to identify him as a weakness and just exploit the hell out of him. And he, for the most part, considering the circumstances, I feel like he's been holding up quite well. With respect to his performance, any notes as far as what you saw in the tape?
I think he had a missed tackle on that long 3rd and 19 conversion, and he would have given up a big pass if Hurts had been able to properly read the coverage in front of him. He missed Dallas Goedert was it Goddard? Is there tight end, or was he out? I don't know.
He was out.
Whoever the tight end was, some no name. Just he was running wide open, and it was something that the Buccaneers had caught Brown in, and Hufanga, which is that vertical up the seam in cover 3. And as if you're in cover 3 and you're Jair Brown as the safety right there, the strong safety, your responsibility is the seam, the flat, and the curl zone, which is kind of this box area outside the tight end to the numbers. And then if no threat is in that area, you look for the seam, because they're probably running through the seam, and that's what it was. Is the tight end got free up the seam, Brown went down to the flat, and Hurts threw it the other way into double coverage. Like if he had seen the safety not rotate, with Gibson kind of stayed on the opposite hash, he would have had a wide open throw, probably a touchdown if he hits the tight end. But he threw it to basically the double coverage side, where Gibson was able to get over the top with the corner and break up a pass. So that he kind of got exposed there. Nobody really noticed it because it was further downfield off the TV, but it was something when I was going back through watching last night that I noticed right away. But outside of that, I didn't really see anything egregious or noteworthy in the wrong direction.
Certainly not a Brian Allen performance.
No, he's not. He's a good player. He for being his 3rd game, he's a good player. Brian Allen got put in a no-win situation. It's kind of like the doghouse you don't want to be in, is being the worst player on the field.
Right.
And that's what Shanahan did to him in that Miami game in 2020 or whatever. But nothing like that at all.
Which, I think there's always a worst case fear of what goes on in your head as far as trying to extrapolate what a player like Jair Brown, talented but young, inexperienced, how that's going to fit against a team that has potential to put big points on the board. I felt pretty good leaving that game, going into thinking about another match against the Seahawks and moving on to the rest of the season. But one conversation that has been dominating the timeline lately has been whether or not Brock Purdy is an MVP viable candidate. We have seen a really solid season from him. We've seen him deliver in very tough games and be a part of some incredibly high scoring offenses. Again, offenses that are putting up 30 points or more. Where do you stand on the Brock Purdy MVP conversation?
I mean, you have to include him, right? I think he's deserving of being in the conversation. I don't think he's like the primary candidate. And if you're looking for a game to say, like, yeah, this was the one that put him in that conversation, it wasn't the Philly game, in my opinion. Although I did think there was, the way the Eagles were playing is like it didn't really lend to him having to make a bunch of difficult throws. And that's going to happen. You're going to have games where he's going to make a ton of those wow throws, and he's going to have games where the situation is not really going to be conducive to it. They really wanted to attack that core of the Philly defense, which was the front and the linebackers, and so that's where they primarily threw the ball. Like it wasn't going to be hey Brock, I need you to throw this 20-yard in cut over in front of the safety because they can't cover it, or on these corners because they can't cover it, because those are some of their stronger players with like Darius Slay and and Bradbury and all that, but they weren't going to do that, and for good reason. Like, why would you want to put him in that situation where he needs to chuck it like that against that team on the back end? Their weakness was really the linebacker core, so the game script just didn't have that added element for him to need to throw it downfield. So in my opinion, it just really wasn't that type of game to be like, yeah, he really took over and took control of it, like he showed he could do versus Tampa Bay or Jacksonville, or Dallas even. Like, he just made a bunch of other MVP worthy plays and throws in those games than he did in this one. So I think he deserves to be in the conversation, but I don't know if he's the MVP right now. Not based on this game.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I think that's totally fair. I didn't know how you were going to answer that.
Well, I like people that like take me seriously know where I'm coming from, because I was skeptical. I did have a lot of questions about that guy coming into this season, and there's still some that he hasn't been able to answer because they went through that 3-game stretch where they didn't win, and so they haven't been in a situation where they've needed him to engineer like a true comeback that he didn't have a part in making, like against the Browns. And that game was kind of fluky all the way around. It wasn't just him. And the Vikings game, I mean, that's up for debate whether his concussions really played a role. And then the Bengals game was just, I mean, that game had the defense's prints all over it, so he wasn't able to engineer a comeback in that just because of the late turnovers that he had in that one. But that's going to happen. Like, you're going to get in those situations. You're not going to win every single time, because 1-score games are too high variance. They could go either way. So it's not really something you want to see them be in a situation where they have to do that. But again, like the whole conversation around him being a dink and dunk passer, I stayed away from that, because when I looked up the data over the offseason of like what the depth of target was for the league and the quarterbacks, you start seeing the trends. Like, the top quarterbacks like Herbert, minus Allen, like Allen the Bills chuck it, and they're always a good team with Allen, but so he's like the anomaly there. But the good teams, Mahomes, the 49ers, whoever the good teams were last year, they don't have a high average depth of target in the passing game. because it's typically because you're throwing to your first read the majority of the time, and it's always open, and it's never a deep throw, and it's or an intermediate throw even. So the most efficient, like basically to summarize that, the most efficient offenses don't throw the ball down the field like that often. Because they're an efficient offense. They don't need to. They don't need to play catch up. They don't need chunk yards. And that's how it was for the top quarterbacks last year. So when calling him dink and dunk, it's like, okay, like we don't really know if he can consistently throw the ball in the 10 to 20 plus yard range area. And this season he showed that he could. And he's fitting it in his, I think he has like the highest EPA per play in tight window throws. Which is pretty noteworthy. Like, you don't think a guy with that limited arm strength could do that, but it's not because of his arm. It's because he's throwing with anticipation, and he can read pretty well what's in front of him, and he knows when he has to throw it and when the guy is going to be open. And then there's several examples I could rattle off just off the top of my head, but I don't want to, belabor the point, but it's just, he, for somebody like me who was skeptical, hugely skeptical coming into this season, I think he's answered a lot of the questions I had. And I just don't think he gets a lot of credit for a lot of that stuff from a lot of the national guys. Not necessarily like the former players, but the other guys you see everyone arguing with this week and off and on this season, from the other publications like The Ringer and stuff. And I respect all their opinions, and I get along with them, and I chat with them quite frequently. And so I don't like, I just, I might disagree with them about a few things here and there on him, but I don't think those guys give him enough credit for what he does. I think they look at the weapons and they're like, oh, they're just doing everything for him, but that's not really the case. But this Sunday, that's what it was. I mean, it was primarily the weapons on the offense doing the heavy lifting. It's not a bad thing at all.
I agree with that too. Yeah, I mean, you got
to
look at his.
I could talk about this for hours.
No, it's good, man. I didn't bring you on to listen to me talk. I think with respect to his MVP viability, we have the luxury of there being more games ahead for us to sufficiently judge the verdict on this. The game that I am most particularly interested in watching with respect to rendering this verdict is the Baltimore game. I want to see him. I want to see him in that game, and I want to really make a judgment call. How important is he to the victory of this game? Now, let me be clear. There is not another quarterback on our. You can talk about the weapons all you fucking want. There is not another quarterback on our roster. There's not another quarterback who's ever been on our roster during the Shanahan era who has the defense like this. And sometimes the Brock Purdy story is hard to comprehend in your brain because of where he was drafted. And where he was drafted was a result of the things that make him great not being measurable in the combine and not being as open and apparent as quarterbacks who had the luxury of course, throwing to bigger and better weapons in college. Every NFL receiver is one of the best college players in their position who ever played. So the level of drop off when it comes to talent in the NFL is not as steep between teams as it is in college. And I think with respect to Brock's performance, we need to put some respect on his name with respect to what he has accomplished with this team consistently. My biggest thing was body of work. He's put together a pretty damn good body of work, and at this point, a full season's worth of games, if you calculate last year's games as well. The question is finishing out the season as we get into, even if it's not a playoff game, if late down the stretch teams are fighting for really important seeding in the playoffs, they're going to compete as if it is the playoffs. Certainly, especially if teams are looking at each other like measuring sticks. And Baltimore is certainly a measuring stick when it comes to the 49ers trying to identify how they're going to fare against other teams down the stretch.
Yeah, like my whole kind of heartburn over this conversation is like, yeah, he's playing really well, but I think the I think the staunchly pro Purdy crowd that thinks he's like that he is the MVP, that he is like a top 5 quarterback or whatever, don't really want to hear you when you say, well, yeah, he's playing well, but like so would like 10 or 12 really good quarterbacks right now would be doing the same thing in the system. And guys that do have a lot more of the physical ability, that are really smart players, the Herberts, the Allens, Trevor Lawrence, they don't want to hear it, which, okay, I mean, that's your prerogative, but um, he might not be as good as they all think, but for the detractors, I certainly don't think he's as bad as they all think either. Like, there are tangible things that he does for this offense and this team that that raises the level of play. Yes, the joke is like, yeah, he has the Avengers with him. Okay, yeah, that helps. Like, but he still has to throw it before the guy uncovers around a linebacker, for some place to even have a chance. Like, it just works out that like the guys he's throwing to are never going to drop the pass, or they're never going to have to be in a position where they have to fight to make a contested catch like that, because he's going to either throw it with anticipation to a spot where he knows they're going to be, um, or maybe they do make a contested catch. Like, the you're seeing right now, like, again, the Herberts, the Allens, the Mahomeses of the league are not, they don't have the talent around them that the 49ers have on their offense. And you're seeing their offenses struggle. Mahomes can't will the Chiefs to a victory over the Packers.
Great point. Great point.
I mean, and there were some calls in that game that could have went in the Chiefs' favor, but like the Chiefs against the Eagles, MVS drops a wide open touchdown. Travis Kelce fumbles in the red zone. Justin Herbert, how many drops does Quentin Johnston have this season? I mean, he's probably dropped a pass in big moments in the last 3 or 4 games that were wide open. Um, Josh Allen, same thing. Like, when these guys can't be flawless, their teams can't win. And this is the NFL. No quarterback is going to be flawless 100% of the time. Um, and as good as those guys are, like, the talent around them, or I should say the lack of talent around them, does matter too. And you're not always going to be able to will your team to victory. So it's certainly not a knock on Purdy, to say, well, he's just got all these great players around him. Well, sure, but they make it work, and he makes it work, and he fits. He does make the really difficult throws when he needs to, and that's great that they have the winning formula right now, and I don't think they can be stopped. But I do. The Baltimore game does give me a little bit of anxiety, because Mike McDonald is probably the most underrated defensive coordinator in the league right now, and he doesn't get talked about enough. What that defense is doing, and I mean, they don't have all the stars like the 49ers have on that defense, but they got some playmakers, and his scheme is sound, and it's basically the same scheme that Michigan runs with Jesse Minter. Um, it's a split safety scheme. They put a lot of pressure on the front four to get pressure on the quarterback, and they do it a lot. So they already made Jared Goff, which is another 9-3 team, look pretty horrific, and they made the Seahawks recently look pretty abysmal too. So they're definitely not a team that anybody should take lightly. They're definitely better than the Eagles, I think. They're probably the best team in the AFC right now.
And speaking of the Seahawks looking abysmal, we have a matchup next week. Or, I'm sorry, this Sunday, the 10th. And by the way, Baltimore, Christmas, hell of a game for Christmas. I hope it doesn't ruin my Christmas, but hell of a game. Really excited for that. One last opportunity to sweep the Seahawks. We have them right where we want them, where all of a sudden it feels like we've got the confidence in this rivalry now. They made sure we held their offense down. Where do you think we land on this last matchup? Do you think we walk away with a strong victory again? Do you think it's tighter?
Um, I'm trying to think back. Like last year the second game with them was much tighter. It was a Thursday game. Um, I mean, it has potential to be with Seattle coming off of their basically 10 days of rest, and San Francisco only having 4 days less. I don't know if that's going to matter as much for San Francisco. I still think they're going to handle business pretty easily in this one. I think Seattle knows that they can't hang with the 49ers, and with the way the Cowboys just if Kellen Moore can put Bobby Wagner in a blender, um, I think Shanahan's going to do that again, like he did to him in the first game a couple weeks ago, and like what he did to the Eagles linebackers. I'm not really worried about it. I think they'll handle business. It's at home. I just like Seattle is like a team that's kind of they're on the rise. They got a really good young core, but they're not quite there, and I think they know they can't hang with this type of offense again this soon. So I don't think I don't think the 49ers are taking it lightly. I hope they're not, but I don't. I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, they're not a team that you can try to sleepwalk your way through the game. I mean, you have to show up with a level of intensity that you know is going to seal the victory, because we learned after our last big emphatic victory against the Cowboys that you're going to get yourself caught slipping if you're not bringing your intensity to the next game. We need to home to the quarterback like we did last time. We need to ensure that the passing game does not hit any full strikes. And considering the fact that Zach Charbonnet had the most receptions out of anyone else that game last time, we need to make sure we're keeping that same energy with respect to how we are approaching playing defense against the Seahawks, because Geno Smith is not a bad quarterback. And these wide receivers are not bad wide receivers. We can't pretend like we can take the day off in the secondary and hope for a victory. I mean, we do need to play our A game, but talent for talent, the 49ers are a better team. We, in all facets of the game, should be walking away as the more powerful opponent in this matchup.
Yeah, and just don't really want to forget that the Seahawks were a dropped Tyler Lockett pass away from probably beating the Cowboys. But
point.
again, that's the little details that the Seahawks, the mistakes that they can't afford to make right now with that kind of team and their record. If the playoffs started this weekend, it would be Green Bay coming out to San Francisco, not Seattle. So, which is a whole nother 2 hour long conversation if you wanted to, but they Seahawks they can't. I think that they'll be up and they'll be ready for it. I think they know they can't hang, but they can't take it lightly either, because their hopes are riding on probably 4 or 5 other teams right now as well that are 6-6. So they could certainly make it interesting. I just don't really think that they necessarily will. I don't think they will at all.
Yeah, I think Eric Armstead being out is a little bit of a drag. I don't think it's a deal breaker. I think we still walk away with a victory. I think it'll probably be something along the lines of 17-24. I think they'll make it closer, but ultimately I think Niners win this one. Do you have a score prediction for this one?
Yeah, I'm probably going to say like 35-17.
Another 30-point game. I like it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, we are rounding out the show, Rich, which means only one thing. That means it's time for affirmations. We make you, dude. I know this is probably your least favorite thing in the world, but after this is over, we are done, and you can enjoy the rest of your evening. So in case you've never seen this, in case this is your first time watching the show, this is affirmations, where we share encouraging words or kind words about players on the 49ers or coaches in the 49ers or really anyone. So I will start by saying, I'll start with Rich. Hey, Rich, I want to thank you for being a frequent guest on this show. I want to thank you for being a good sport in doing affirmations. I know you spend a lot of time on Twitter. I do too. Nobody says anything fucking nice. But for you to come on here and open up your heart and share some kind words really means a lot. And I appreciate you. Appreciate you coming on.
Well, I guess I'll get one for you then. Your show is fantastic. Keep working hard with it, and I see the discussion it generates. People love the vibes. I think you bring the vibes everywhere you go. Although we haven't officially met in person, I know we will one day, and I know it'll probably be the best time of my life outside of me meeting Jason Aponte. Whenever that happens. But listen, man, the vibes on this show are fantastic. The sound, everything, the flow, the format, can't be overstated.
Oh, dude, I appreciate that. I really do. Oh, dude, this is the second show in a row. People said nice shit about me. I like it. All right.
I don't care what they say about you.
Oh, yeah. There's also people who say, yeah, well, fuck those people. Fuck the haters, dude. I want to give some kind words to Greenlaw. You were, as the kids say, you were just standing on business. And you stuck your finger in that meatball's face because he was sticking his greasy hands on you. But I really do, that both parties in this interaction were able to sort of squash the beef, get it past them, not make it a big scene, move on. And I respect that. I respect people squashing dumb beef. I think it's always a plus. So thank you for doing that. I know it was weird. I know you got kicked out for one. Was that? Yeah, a little greasy tomato sauce, beef squashing, dude.
Sourdeath Sam. I think I had one for Kinlaw last time.
You did.
Encouraging him to step up and play to his ability. And I would like to say that, Javon Kinlaw, you have been having a phenomenal season. Keep it up. Keep up the pressure, literally and figuratively. And play your butt off against Seattle this weekend with Armstead out.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So good. So real. Let me just get some comments out. Charbonnet is the only fraudulent Zach showing up on Sunday. So real.
That's
so real.
Not true. Zach will have some weird food take between now and then that nobody will enjoy.
Oh, dude. Yeah, dude. Oh, my God. If anyone doesn't know this person, do not pay attention to their
engage
food
with
takes,
them about
dude.
food.
Just garbage.
Well, unless it's a bad take, then let him have it.
Rip him to shreds, dude.
Yes,
Rich looks like an alt-right
yes,
Twitch
sir.
streamer. Hey. Got big January 6th live stream vibes over here, dude. You didn't like that one, did you? Guys,
That's funny. No, I thought it was funny.
Guys, once again, really, really appreciate Rich coming on. Let me just throw this up again. If you have not seen it, bit.ly/watch the tape. This is Rich's amazing football analysis blog. Goes into excruciating detail about all the things that will make you look cool in front of your football friends and scare all the baddies away if you try to talk to them at the club about it. But lucky for you, you're probably not hanging out with baddies because you're hanging out with me right now.
The baddies are getting ready to go to bed, so I'm going to have to jump off here.
Hey, me too. Rich, thank you for hopping on, man. put the kids to sleep, get you to sleep too. You're a baddie yourself, so don't take yourself for granted. So, ladies and gentlemen, Richard Madrid. All right, guys. Well, we are approaching Christmas, which is really sick. And I hope you all are spending great time with your family. Football is an awesome opportunity to sort of gather around the TV and do that as well. And, every time you spend doing this live stream shit with me, I appreciate it. I love you for that. So I want to thank you once again for hopping on to join me. And I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Go Niners.